So a lot of people have been talking about how the new Star Wars has ruined Star Wars. And I just wanted to put my thoughts in, my 2 cents. So this is going to be unscripted, but we'll see how this goes. Anyways, before the 7th movie, like most people, I was kind of hyped because obviously it was a lot of fan service. We had stormtroopers that looked more normal, and it looked a lot more like Star Wars than George Lucas's prequels, which I think in everybody's mind at that point didn't really turn out. And I think people were excited to get more Star Wars that was more in the classic style of the original trilogy, but obviously that didn't work out incredibly well because now everybody's throwing a bitch fit over the series. So I just thought I'd give my 2 cents. Personally, I thought the saga as a whole, or I should say the sequel trilogy as a whole, was alright. It had its moments that were good. I thought what they did with the original 7th movie was pretty good. Like, I understand why they would go back and kind of remake episode 7 in ways, because I think for a lot of people this was going to be a new audience, or their first time seeing Star Wars. For example, younger people, a lot of international audiences hadn't gotten Star Wars, and if they did, it was kind of bootleg, like Eastern Europe and stuff. That's why we have like Turkish Star Wars out there, for whoever's heard of that. So I understand why they would kind of go back to scratch on that one, and it was an interesting adaptation of A New Hope, essentially. I mean, the movie didn't change that much. It had its own twists and turns. In that first movie, I think like Rey, Finn, and Kylo Ren really stood out. I thought Rey was interesting. There were a lot of interesting places to take her. They didn't really do much with her though, so I kind of wish they fleshed her out. I'll get into that more later. Kylo, I kind of liked the idea of Kylo, where he's kind of like the failure Skywalker, where everyone says, oh, Luke was so great, Anakin was a great Jedi before, and a strong Sith. Even so, as a hero and a villain, he's kind of a failure in comparison to his family name, so that definitely weighed on him. But in general, I thought that was kind of an interesting concept, what they did with Kylo, where they were taking him, where he was kind of like the loser third wheel Skywalker that no one cared about, and essentially he gets pounded by Rey, and Rey's basically a nobody, at least as far as this movie goes. Finn, I thought that was interesting, but his entire character arc was kind of solved in 7. And I thought what they did with Han Solo was cool. It was a cool way to get rid of the character, kind of move past his arc. And I thought it was cool, a cool way to usher in the new generation, I guess. And what they did with his story was pretty neat. Princess Leia was good in that. I think where a lot of the problems arised was 8. 8 is flawed as a movie, not just as like a Star Wars movie, because I think some of the places they were going would have been kind of interesting, like maybe Luke swearing off the Jedi and stuff would have been interesting, but they just didn't really do it right, and he kind of just comes back to being a Jedi for no reason at all. But my main problem really is just with how the story's set up, because you look at like Poe's story, Poe's still kind of not a character. Like in 7 they didn't really do much with him. In 8, instead of expanding him, they kind of just also had him do nothing but run around a spaceship, and nobody on the spaceship really did anything. It was kind of dumb taking Leia out the movie, because you'd think then you'd have like the new people like Holdo and Poe shine, but instead Holdo really doesn't do anything but acts like a bitch, and then she dies and everyone's sad about it for no reason. And then you have Poe, who doesn't really do anything or learn anything or have a character yet. He just does yo mama jokes. That's what we know about Poe. So seeing his leadership was kind of established and would be continued in 9 a bit, but we didn't really see much of that. Finn and Rose, I mean, they clearly didn't know where they were going to go with Finn in that movie, so they did nothing with him. They just kind of sent him off. Rose wasn't a very interesting character. That might partially be because they didn't really put her in an interesting situation. Like going down to a casino planet and solving nothing isn't really that cool. And then at the end of their long third of the movie, where nothing gets accomplished, really. They end up fighting Captain Phasma another time, which in theory could be cool. But what they did with Phasma was basically, kill her again. And I want to point out, and I didn't mention this because these are just brief synopsis, it was kind of dumb that they built up Captain Phasma and then implied killed her off screen, so when she comes back, it's just kind of dumb. And then especially since they just half-baked her and killed her again. The only one I thought was kind of interesting, Rey's arc in Last Jedi, was okay. I kind of liked Rey better after that, and I thought they fleshed out her character more, but it was kind of dumb that a lot of what was the mysteries that were established in 7 were kind of ignored for 8, and then just told that was unimportant. They killed off Snoke. They said Rey's parents were nobodies, and these are the questions basically people as a fan base, it's what people were most interested in learning to come back for. And if it was done more tastefully, I could see what they did, but they didn't really do it incredibly tastefully or add anything, so it was kind of just stupid, and retrospectively made all those things kind of just pointless red herrings and a waste of time, which angered people. But ultimately, if you look at the movie as a whole, they kind of didn't really do Luke as much justice as Han, so no one really cared about Luke, and people were pissed about that. Poe and Rose's part was pointless and long, and I want to point out that this was the longest Star Wars movie, and essentially nothing happened. It all takes place really in 4 locations, in a spaceship, on a casino planet, on a different spaceship, on Luke's little island, and on Crate, so I guess 5 locations, but still. And it doesn't feel like anything happened. It feels long, but it feels like nothing happened. It feels like I kind of just sit there for 2 hours, then I'm like, well, that was that movie. So I thought that's kind of where they threw a wrench in the franchise, and it was kind of like, where do you go from here? But then they just went going on to episode 9. They kind of just retconned everything. Like, Snoke was now just Palpatine the whole time, sort of, it's not really explained if he's like Palpatine actually, or if he was like a projection Palpatine made. I guess it's kind of irrelevant, but something like that. Rey's Grandpa turned out to be Palpatine, but her parents were still unimportant, so that wasn't technically a lie, so they can get away with it. And 9, while shorter, like a million more things happened in 9 than 8. My problem with 9 is that it's so breakneck that I'll hear people complain about problems that are explained, but are explained so fast that it's like it actually took me 2 viewings, and a lot of the things that I was confused about were explained. But the thing is, I feel like I should be able to watch it once and understand what's going on, but it's just so much shit that happens all at once that it's kind of hard to care. Poe finally got a character, but it was kind of in vain because, it was pretty much what we've seen before, but finally just translated into a character instead of him just standing there. We have Finn is around still. He doesn't really do anything. Like, his character arc was clearly done in 7, so it's kind of awkward to have him around. Like, they couldn't have had his character arc expand past 7, so they just kind of have him there. And then Rey and Kylo's story continues, which was cool. I thought it was weird that they were in love at the end, but otherwise, whatever. Leia was really awkward in the movie because you could tell that the lines didn't really match up with what was actually going on. So, if that was actually the line she said and I didn't have the previous knowledge that she was dead, I'd be really confused why she's saying the awkward, weird things she's saying. It just comes off really rubbery and fake, like she's she seems like a side character NPC in Grand Theft Auto or something that would just walk up, you just shoot them or something and they're like, hey, it doesn't really make sense. It's really awkward, but I guess I can get past it. I guess the Emperor coming back, that doesn't really bother me. They've already done so much blasphemy to Star Wars in this saga that having him back didn't affect me at all. Like, people complain about that, and I mean, I would complain about it normally, but at this point you already fucked up so hard with 8. Like, where do you go with it? So I mean, I thought it was kind of cool. The new force powers were kind of cool. Some things were kind of cool. The new characters they introduced were all kind of dumb. Like the black girl that shows up, and she's like, I used to be a stormtrooper, so now I'm just going to kind of be here in the finale, and that's it. And then you got the girl in the weird helmet who's like, Poe and I used to be in love, but now I'm going to go away for 3/4 of the movie and show up again in the finale. Like, that was all kind of dumb. I read people say online that those characters could have been Rose Tico, which is retarded because the scenes are pretty specifically made for characters that weren't Rose Tico. But they probably shouldn't have just been written in at all. And I would have even been fine if Rose Tico came along on the adventure. I don't hate her for being a woman. My only request is, if you're going to add Rose Tico in, actually give her a character this time. But the writing in The Last Jedi is really retarded in general. And in this movie, it's so rushed. That's my biggest problem. It felt a lot more like Star Wars, which I can say is a positive, and kind of like a negative, because you almost marvelize Star Wars, where it's not anything special anymore. Although Disney's already kind of done that with like Solo and Rogue One. I thought Rogue One was kind of trash, but I actually liked Solo, but I can still agree that it's like, you pretty much marveled Star Wars. I mean, they even went so far as to be like, oh, the Infinity Saga and Marvel were good, so this is the Skywalker Saga now. As of episode 9, it's the Skywalker Saga, which is dumb, because I feel like the Star Wars saga is just the story of the Skywalkers as far as like the normal continuity. So I don't want to see like you're kind of setting yourself up for disaster to set up like a new 9-movie saga with like another character and be like, this is like the fucking Kit Fisto saga or some shit. That's a really stupid idea. Like, that's not gonna turn out well for you, Disney. I think you're setting yourself up for higher expectations, lower amounts of things you can lean on. So it sounds like a horrible idea to me, but they can try it if they want. Ultimately, what I think of the sequels are, overall the saga was okay. I would have rather they put more thought into it before they made it, so that we actually could get something more coherent. I would have even maybe preferred, after 8 sucked so much ass, just swallowing your pride, doing an episode 9 and an episode 10, because at this point, who cares? I don't understand why they kind of like felt like they had to do a trilogy. Like, the original series was a trilogy and called one of the best trilogies of all time, so, and they had the prequel trilogy, so I guess they were just like, well, we're forced into a trilogy. But I almost would have preferred they just made an episode 10, just do like 4 movies instead, and kind of like actually make a middle chapter to this story, because as it stands, you could go from 7 to 9 and very little would change, other than the fact that you'd be like, why the hell is Luke Skywalker dead now? But whatever. Like, I personally, that's what I would have done, is I would have just said fuck it and made 10 movies. First off, you make more money. Second off, you can make your story actually kind of make sense and not have to like jam so much into 9. Like, 9 makes sense to me after a couple viewings, but it still feels so rushed. That's my ultimate problem with 9. So those are just some like free-flowing thoughts. Ultimately, I did like Kylo Ren's story. I like Kylo Ren as a character. I like Rey to an extent as a character, even though some parts were half-baked. They kind of dropped the ball on the original trilogy characters, at least Luke and Leia, but I mean, I can't really fault them on Leia. Like, what were you gonna do after Carrie Fisher died? And Luke was 100% their fault, but whatever. But all I'm saying is, from now on, you gotta plan movies. Like, Kevin Feige actually feels like he plans his movies, despite the varying quality at Marvel. I mean, I'd say like 70% of Marvel movies are at least okay. And granted, I did like 3 of the 5 Disney Star Wars movies so far, or at least thought they were okay. I didn't really like any of them that much. I guess Solo. I liked Solo, but mostly. Other than that Darth Maul part, that was pretty retarded. But as far as it goes, those are my very basic thoughts on this. I just kind of thought I would throw my 2 cents in the ring. Was episode 7 bad? No, not really. Was episode 8 bad? Yeah, and I'm not just saying that as like on a Star Wars level, because if it was a good film I would still give it a pass, but you kind of just threw off the entire direction of the series, and you have the longest film in the series, and what they did was dick around, and 2/3 of the movie was garbage, and the Luke and Rey stuff was okay, but still misguided in my opinion. So that's my thoughts. If you want to give me your thoughts down below, I'm sure 90% of you guys are either just going to say you love all 3 of the movies. Actually, no, that's not what's going to happen either. 90% of you guys are either going to say you love The Last Jedi and hate 9, or you love 9 and hate The Last Jedi, because that seems to be what it has to be now. I'm sure if we look back on these movies in 10 years, everyone's going to hate all 3 of them, like the prequels, which is probably fair. I probably will too. But whatever. The Mandalorian's okay, so if you haven't seen that, it might be worth a watch. I'm not saying pirate it, but I'm not telling you to support Disney Plus either. Wink. So, okay, that was my awkward free thought video that didn't turn out incredibly well. Thanks for watching, guys.